Hi, Chantal. We are meeting here on the publication, on the occasion of the publication of this book, Politics and Passions. I think, first of all, we should thank the publisher for doing such an excellent job on designing this book. I do like the lilac color and the font in art deco style. It's a choice rather associated with decor and decadence rather than a political thought and critical reflection. And I think it's a witty little provocation in sync with our ideas. Do you like it?
Yes, I like it a lot, I must say. I must tell you that I was, well, you remember that this book has been in the making because we met in 2007, yes, that's right, yes.
Right.
And, but I think you made this proposal, it's not during the time that you were in London, it's after, no? Do you remember when you talked?
I think it was towards the end of my stay in London. I think we went to see Chantal Zuckerman's exhibition.
Yes, yes.
And then I asked you, Chantal.
That's what gave you the idea, maybe? Or yeah, well, I must say I was very intrigued when you told me that you wanted to make some kind of concrete poetry with my conference, I remember. And I was wondering, you know, what is that going to look like? But no, I think no. And of course, in the meantime, because I saw the first thing was the text only. Yes, you show me some. Yeah, then I began to realize, because I said concrete poetry with the. But then I began to realize, you know, that what it was. But no, with all the, you know, the images, and I think it's really nice, and I think it works very well. So no, I'm really pleased with the result. But maybe what you could tell us is what. So well, you just mentioned Chantal Ackerman. But is that what make you want to make that book, when you or had you some kind of idea before about the book? Or how did you came to this idea of making a book with a text of mine? Because of course, you know, when you asked me, I gave you that text, but you did not ask me especially for that text. You asked me what I thought.
No,
would be.
right.
What moved you to make such proposal to me?
Right. I asked you which text would you like to give me, and you gave me that particular text.
Yeah.
And I've been also always interested in writing and in theory, although I have no academic training. But I found it also inspiring trying to understand various theories. And your theory inspired me in particular. It really showed me how to think differently, perceive the world differently. And I encountered it when I was a student at Städelschule in Frankfurt. And the world seemed a bit dark to me. I mean, you know, I was just getting to know the art world. And it seemed really dominated by the market. And it seemed there were only these two possibilities. On one hand, the market, the dealers searching for young and upcoming artists. And on the other, there were those philosophers that students talked about, like Paulo Virno or Antonio Negri, those theorists who advocated exodus from existing institutions. So there was very little hope how to engage for someone like me. And then one day, when at the front desk of Frankfurter Kunstverein, I found your text, and there was this voice, very clear voice, saying, No, it's not that there are no possibilities. There is always a way out from the situation, and things can be otherwise. It's only the hegemony that wants you to believe that, but there is no way out. So that message was felt very powerful to me. And from that moment on, I thought I would like to do something. I would like to meet, first of all, a person who wrote it, and I would like to share this idea. But there were a few other things why I wanted to make a book with you. Actually, a lot of things why I found you interesting, and definitely one of these things is what you say about art. That art makes people think about the world differently, imagine other possibilities, and thus it has a political agency. And also what I found is important was what you were saying about violence. And I grew up hearing my father very often say that it's abnormal that there have been no violent conflict in Europe for that long after the Second World War, and that can change any moment. So that ever-present possibility of violence felt very actual to me. And then I found in your writing this idea that yes, the society consists of positions that can't be reconciled, and at any moment there can be an eruption, and that can lead, confrontation can lead to a violent conflict, but there are ways how to avoid it, and you show it how your theory of agonism.
If I remember well, this text that of mine that you mentioned, that you read, is an article of mine in Parquet, an article about Carsten Euler, no, about an exhibition that he did here in Britain. Yeah, I don't remember when that was, but so you read that was the start, and then after that you tried to read other books by me, or in fact, when you came to London, how long after that was, how long after you read this article of mine?
Well, I think I encountered your text around 2004, and then I came to London in 2007, I think.
So, and in the meantime, you had read some of my books, yeah?
Yes, I did. Indeed, yes. And I loved how succinct they were, I loved the tone on your voice, that clarity.
Yeah. So that the article on Carsten Euler, the spark, and then you began to read more. Yeah. And so this is why when you came to London, you contacted me. I think you asked me if you could. I was given a course on state politics and violence, wasn't it? And
yes, you were giving a course. Yeah.
And of course, what you just said about your father telling, I can understand why the topic of the course was of kind of interest to you, no?
Exactly, and also we have to, we have to remember when in the 90s the Balkan War happened, and then people were quite surprised by that. In regard that there were all these theories about the end of politics and the end of history ideas, and I think I connected also to your ideas and to you, because you write about passions, and that my first experience of a political event was through affect, through feelings. When I was a child, the Berlin Wall fall, there was the round table in Poland, and I remember the atmosphere of that time. I couldn't understand it intellectually, right, what was going on, but I felt the emotions. I felt that inspiration in the air. So, through that, your your approach and your ideas, the way how you underline the idea of passions and affect is very important to me.
Yeah, no, and I remember when you contacted me, to ask if you could take my course. Well, I was also a bit surprised. I think you were the first artist who wanted to take my course. Of course, it was a moment when I had already begun, to have contact with the art world, because, well, that's at the beginning, in 2000 or something like that, I began to receive first invitation, to go to museum, to the Magpie in Barcelona, to the, it was another one in Hamburg. Stephen Gulfen was the director of the Hamburg Kunstverein, invited me. And I was really surprised when those people invited me, because then I used to say, well, I'm not an art critic, and I said, no, don't worry. We don't want you to come and speak about art. We just are interested in your theories. Come and also, I think that must have been in 2003. It was when I was invited by Peter Weibel, who was at that moment the curator for the Austrian pavilion of the Biennale, Venice Biennale, and he also contacted me he wanted me to write a piece for his catalog, But again I say, well, I'm not an artist, and he said, no, don't worry. Well, of course, and being Peter typical, I asked for one. Well, do you want it? Because, and he said the deadline was last week on Saturday, but don't worry, we'll make an arrangement for you. And in fact, it was the title of the general topic of the Biennale was nomadism. And I went, in fact, I wrote the piece without having seen at all the exposition of the pavilion. But when I went to see it, it just fitted. Peter Weibel has got some sense. He knew that, in a sense, he saw some affinities between what he was showing and what I was writing. So I was really very pleasantly surprised from that. But no, so when you contacted me, let's say it was not completely out of the blue that artists were really showing some interest in my work, but I'm interested to think what gave you the in this case, what was the spark for writing the book and making this proposal of doing some kind of concrete poetry with one of my texts? What gave you the idea of doing that?
Mm-hmm. Well, first of all, because I've done other projects with text, and then with your text in particular, I felt that it was important to create something that would be widely available, portable, and that would include a few mediums, like that we could merge a few mediums in it. So a format of a book seemed logical. But I also wanted in this book to capture your approach, and or what I thought was felt was your approach, that invitation to question and to reflect, to reconsider what one thinks is the right way or what one takes for granted. And that's why I wanted to cut your collage, your text, by cutting it and by arranging it into this vertical composition, so to change the way how one reads it.
Yeah, in fact, I'm quite interested to say what is the procedure? What did you do exactly with my text, or did you transform that into a concrete poetry, as you call it? I mean, how did you work with it?
Yeah. I took the pamphlet which you gave me, Politics and Passions and the Stakes of Democracy, and I scanned each page of it. And then digitally, I started recomposing the sentences. And I tried to imagine a voice, someone's voice, in order to come up with how the words should appear on a page. And some sentences stood out for me, so they kind of get, or some words, they get more space, and some feel more melodic, so they are maybe more condensed. And I did it all very freely, except for one rule, which I followed, which was to always put I or we at the top of the page, because I wanted to make the text feel more personal, but also to underline this idea of yours about how identities are being formed, how they are not given, but the I, who I am and to what group I belong, is not something happening naturally, but it depends on context and on the decisions which I make.
Yeah, and, yeah. So that was how you work with it. Yeah, I remember when you first. Did you remember when it was that? Because of course, as you said, the book has been was a long process, you know. But I first saw you only work with the text, no? And I remember when I saw that the first mise en page, I would say, but that at that moment I began to realize, because before I had no idea really was going to happen. But I remember I liked it already. I saw that it makes sense, you know, to me, and I really liked the way you had been working with my text. I think it was beautiful aesthetically, you know. I really liked it. But at that stage, I think you did not yet plan to have images, or did you have? Because the first project that I saw, there was no images, you know. So when did you come with the idea of having images?
Yeah, well, when I finished the text, the collaging the text, which was like the first part maybe of the book, and I found that the outcome looked really beautiful. It had this minimalist conceptual look. So I could have left it as that, but looking like that, but I felt that wasn't enough, and I felt it needed some other component. It needed to clash this black and white aesthetics, needed something else. And I had a really hard time coming up with the idea what it could be. Like whatever I thought I could put there felt either too much or too little. And around that time, which is around 2009, when I completed the textual collage, I kept on drawing people on the subway. It was when I moved to New York, and you know, I was struck by the diversity, by the commuters on the train.
That's when you went to the Whitney Independence Republic.
Right,
yes?
right. Yeah. So my route was from Brooklyn, Bushwick to Canal Street, and there was a huge diversity of commuters, and I sort of kept on sketching them, but I didn't think that these sketches were that great, and I felt that they weren't definitely good enough to be incorporated in the book. But I felt it would be good to have portraits of people in the book, since you write, you know, your theory is about the question how to live together. And how identities are being formed. So I liked that idea, but I, you know, kept on thinking about it, like what to do, and it wasn't quite coming to me how to resolve it. And it took over 10 years when it finally struck me what to do with that. And I think I needed that long, because I got the idea to use the reproductions of my works from these 10 years to make the collages of people using these sketches. So yeah, actually it happened when I was working on a painting of a figure, which I started with the outlines of my body. So directly on canvas. So that gave me the idea for using the outlines of the sketches and then using the images of my work to create the portraits of people I once saw and drew.
Okay, so that was the moment when you decided to use the sketches that you had done to make photo montage, yes?
Right.
Yeah, and so when was that exactly, more or less?
Well, I think it was 2000 and it was 2000 or 2019 when I started working on it.
Oh yeah, so yeah, it was
Yes.
a long process of
Actually,
maturation, you know. Really.
yes.
But what was your process of making the photo montage? And you know, that's integration of your sketch. And can you just give us an example of what you did or how you proceeded?
Yes, I can. Actually, many people are asking me how they are looking at it, and they're like, so what did you exactly do here? So first I took the sketches and I simplified the outlines to get clear shapes. And then when doing that, I tried to also to remember the person I once drew. And I tried to look through the images of my work up to date, diverse projects, thinking which image would kind of correspond with the person, with my memory, but also strictly formally fit the composition. And then I would choose a few images and cut them digitally alongside the outlines of the sketches to create the image of a person. I mean, I can give you an example. For example, this face this portrait of this person on the cover was made out of 3 works. And one of them actually I have here with me. Wait a moment, I can show you. This is a photo montage of all, I don't know if you can see it, but of all different
I see it, yes.
avant-garde groups that are usually reproduced in art history books. And this is a piece which is from a series of works from 2010. It's a framed photo montage, which I took, or the image of it I took, and I put it here as the background of the person on the cover.
Yeah, I can see, yeah.
And then I chose 2 other images from, again, different time. And one is, well, let me find it. One moment. This collage, it's called Lee, and it has the eye of Lee Miller in the middle. Then it has these cutouts from newspapers, different images from newspapers and gold leaf and sanding paper. And then it became the face. And the last image I used was demos from 2016. And it was a painting based on the image of the demonstrations in solidarity with Charlie Hebdo victims. It was actually a work that was based on my other works. So this idea of going back to my works, to my other works, and to the images that I find is the way how I often work. And I think I like this idea of putting elements together which are not really meant to be together, and they are somehow incongruous, and to create these clashes, juxtapositions.
So it's an agonistic procedure.
I think so. I wanted to ask you about it because I have an art historian term who coined a very smart sounding term to describe this practice of mine. And he says, what I do, you create collisions of ever-changing oppositions. That's how he calls it.
It's
a collision of ever-changing oppositions.
Yes, yeah. I like.
But I thought it really reflects your idea of agonism.
An agonistic procedure. So I mean, it's quite a complex process, and you did that with all the photomontage in the book, all of them.
Yes, with all of them, and some of them are more complex than this because they include even more images, reproductions.
Yeah. No, it's they are all very, very beautiful. I mean, I really like them, and but it's a complex process. It takes time. I mean, how much time did you spend normally on the whole for each photomontage?
Well, it's not easy to say because each collage took different amount of time, and then I would come back to it. But I developed them over a period of 1 year. With some of them came more easily together, and some I really had a difficulty. For example, some parts like the face would look great, but I couldn't find the right background, and it wouldn't somehow match my memory of the person. Something felt out of
in each
order.
time as a memory of a person, really?
It was, to a certain extent. Actually, I was surprised how much of details I would remember, how much of it would come back to me while I was looking at a sketch. Like I could, like the whole situation would come back to me of a person, and little details of a button or the expression or how this person moved. So I felt it was it was good for it was useful and good for the photomontages to try to stay close to my memories, because these were like real people, real facts, and I think if we whatever abstract we create, but when it comes from something real, it's really part of reality, then it will just make the final composition richer and more moving, more convincing.
Yeah, it's really no, and I like them all. I mean, I think the one of the probably this is one of the one I prefer, but there are many other which I think are really so. Let's say you have you have them separate. You keep so before on what those are photos, yes, photos. So you have the maquette or the thing for each of them. You've got the original, yes.
Well, the original is actually a digital file.
It's digital. It's digital.
Yes.
Okay.
I tried a few things like cutting. They went through a few different stages, but the final composition is really digital. So even we could say what's printed in the book.
Yeah, I see. Okay, so that's it. That's really interesting. So let's go a bit more in general about your work, because so we were just mentioning, this collision of ever-changing opposition, and I told you that it thinks of me, it connotes some kind of agonism. So I mean, did you? Because you say you're interested in my ideas, but do you feel that there is some kind of things that in your work, what you want to do as an artist, do you also identify with this project of an agonistic democracy, or is there? Can you envisage, for instance, your work as some kind of agonistic intervention through your work, or do you? What do you want to achieve with your work, and what is the place of this book in your whole project?
Well, I would like to make people regain the ability to see things differently, beyond what's considered the right way, and to imagine other possibilities. And I think this ability, as you clearly show in your theory, is of political significance, right? And I see my work as a tool for change, to see or to feel more. And I hope that can inspire people to reflect on their own position and who they are and who they want to be. And in that sense, I think, like, align with what you are saying, that art can't change the world, but art can contribute to changing the world.
Yes, so in fact, you remember a discussion what I have and also I wrote a lot about that when I was criticizing the idea that there might be I said that I don't like this distinction between, speaking of political art, to refer in fact to art which is some kind of, what I call critical, because I think that for me there is a political dimension in every form of art, and the art which is not critical is not that is non-political. For instance, and of course, this is linked with my conception of idea of hegemony, and that, and the role of artistic practices in an hegemony. Those practices either contribute to install it, to maintain it, or to subvert it, even art or artistic practices that are not critical directly of a given hegemonic order, they play a role in reproduction of the existing, order. So this is what I remember, but that's something that I've written a lot about, and we've discussed also that, in fact, instead of speaking of political art and so supposedly non-political art, I prefer to speak of critical art. So you definitively locate yourself in the field of critical art. I mean, this is how you envisage your contribution. But in today, I mean, what do you think is the main challenge for critical artists, for artists who really want to engage with the world, but in a critical way?
Well, I think the main challenge is to keep on making work that awakens a desire to question. And I think that challenge is to take a risk with every new work and to put oneself in a precarious position of proposing something new or something slightly different, rather than something what's been already mastered or appreciated. And I am saying it as someone who's been working now for a longer period of time. And I think that artists need to push themselves out of their comfort zone. And I mean, of course, artists do it with every presentation. But what I mean is to push oneself in respect to oneself, as opposed to public or to colleagues. And that feeling of vulnerability, it's then part, I mean, it's not a fear of others, but it's a fear of oneself, and it's a way of connecting with oneself, questioning oneself. I think if we artists want the public the viewers to question themselves, we need to do it in the first place. So I think this is the biggest challenge, and it's really difficult to keep on doing that.
And no, you refer to another discussion that we had where I was saying that's an example I gave you, that I was part of in Paris of little conference, and the title was "Can Art Change the World?" And what I defended there was no, art can't change the world on its own, but it can contribute to change the world, because there was this moment. I don't think it's so much the case today, but that was maybe 5 or 4 years ago, in which well, artists were in general cultural workers, and they were so disappointed with the state of politics. It was at the moment of what I criticize on the political, the post-political and the third way. And they were saying, well, there's absolutely no hope that things will be changed through traditional politics. So no, it's the role of changing the world is artists. We artists could change the world. And of course, it's very much linked to this current of art and negri and those people who were saying that one should not engage with the institution, one should withdraw from the institution, and that and create some kind of alternative world. So they was very much linked with that conception. Well, I don't believe that. I think that one needs. We are not going to be able to change the world artists on their own, But I think that an articulation between a form of more, traditional type of politics. What I always like to speak of articulation of the horizontal and the vertical. The horizontal being the social movement, but also all the things that happen in the field of cultural artistic practices, which are in articulation with more traditional form of politics. Let's say, for instance, I'm thinking example of parties like Podemos or France Insoumise, who a type of left who really say, no, we want to enter the institution, we want to transform the institution, we want to transform the state. That is very much what I consider really important if one is trying to imagine the relation between the artistic cultural practices and politics. They need each other, because I don't think that pure traditional politics is going to really create the condition for a change, because in fact, what is important, if you want to really bring people to, for example, what we all have in mind, of course, is a challenge to neoliberalism, obviously, so you need some institutional form, but you need also to create the form of subjectivity. You need to make people desire a change, And of course, this we come back to my question of affects. I think that, it seems to me, and I'm a bit, repeating the same thing since many years, but I'm convinced even more today that there's a problem with what I call the rationalism of the left, because the left is very good in establishing programs and when we will be in power, we will do that. When we will do that. But they never asked, how are we going to get there? Or now, how are we going to make people desire a change? For instance, all over Europe at the moment, but I think it obviously is true for the US too, the level of abstention among people is so incredible and so dangerous, because it means that people they don't believe anymore in politics, and I think that it's really important to create new form of subjectivity, to create in people the desire to mobilize their affect towards a change. And in fact, unfortunately, and that's something that I've also been repeating, the right-wing populists are much more conscious of that, and they are much better of mobilizing affect, because the left believes, no, we on the left, we can't use affect and passion, and we only use rational argument. When we speak with people, we should only use rational argument. And those people, those right-wing demagogues who mobilize affect, that's what the fascists do. And I think that it's really, for me, it's one of the reasons why the right is very much more successful in mobilizing people than the left. And as you know, in fact, if they've got some kind of idea fix in my work, is to criticize this kind of rationalism, to insist on the role of the power of affect. By the way, the book that I'm going to, I'm writing at the moment, the title is left politics and the power of affects, because I consider that particularly in the present conjuncture is crucial. It's absolutely crucial to organize politics that speak to the affect of people, and I don't think that, for instance, abstract idea, people say, no, we must fight against capitalism, we must fight about socialism. People are not moved by those abstract ideas. Abstract ideas are important, but for theory, in political practice, you need to speak with people to the way the problem that they have. And for instance, that's something that I wanted to introduce in our discussion, because since we had our last dialogue, that was published in the book, that was it was 2020, was it? If I remember well, let me.
Yes, I think, around that time.
Yeah. Well, I think that the conjuncture has changed, and this is very much the kind of thing that I've been thinking of recently. Because, for instance, my last book, For Left Populism, that was written at a moment in which what I call the populist moment, there was a very high level of politicization. We had a lot of movement. I think that things today are very different, and the pandemics have really transformed the conjuncture. We are in a
I wanted to ask you, what do you think about, because we've been talking, like having once a year a big discussion, and like, what is your take on things right now?
Yeah, well, there are two things I want to say about that. First, what I think we need to do, but also some kind of diagnostic about the situation. I think that in For Left Populism, I was saying, the principal adversary today are the right-wing populist movement. I mean, I think that those are still, dangerous, and of course, situation is different according to different countries. They are more problematic in certain countries than in others. But I think that what I am seeing, and I'm quite worried about that, because we were in fact at that moment taking for granted that was the end of neoliberalism. It was in final crisis after the 2008 crash, and that there was absolutely no way in which neoliberalism could revive. I think that what we are seeing at the moment, and I'm thinking particularly in the case of France, which is one of the best with Britain, some kind of a new form of neoliberalism, which is like if the pandemics have given neoliberalism a new leaf of life. But it's a neoliberalism which is much more authoritarian, and that use, digital form. I mean, very much. It's obvious that the people who really came on top, the winning from the pandemics are the Silicon Valley big techs. Those people have been making incredible gain during that period. And also, they've been trying to say, well, this phenomenon that Evgeny Morozov called technological solutionism, this idea that all the problem that we have can be solved through technological solution, that with the artificial intelligence, absolutely, politics will not have need, all the problem can be resolved through artificial intelligence. And I think that this is something which is extremely dangerous, because of course it means that there's no place for politics anymore. So while in 2007-8, when I wrote the book, I was speaking of a return of the political, after the post-politics. Now, what I see is a new form of post-politics, some kind of, digital post-politics. And here we need to take account of something, is that the pandemics have created, and a need for protection. People are not very much, Iran, I'm not sure that we can say the same thing for the US, but I'm thinking basically of Europe, you know, all those movements, the Gilets jaunes, and all those things, you know, if really, wouldn't say disappear, but they've lost impetus, a lot of impetus. And some people would say, oh, it's because of the pandemic, and when the pandemic, because of the restriction of the pandemic, when, you know, this is lifted, we will come back to, they will emerge again. No, I am afraid, well, I hope that I'm wrong, honestly, but I am afraid that there's been a real transformation in the consciousness of the people, because no, there are some, they need to be protected, and they are told, well, you know, for instance, one thing that really caught my attention in the fact that a series of a digital form of control that were not accepted before. No, people are accepting, you know, without too much, you know, reticence, a lot of control that 2 years ago they would not have accepted. And it's because that is, but in need to protect you. You know, this is the way in which you are going to be protected. And I think that what I see is the possibility of development of some people are saying, oh, that's post-neoliberal, because of course it's not exactly the same kind of, you know, pose for these things. It's much more authoritarian, and there is a very important component of digital technologies, but it's still basically neoliberalism, you know. And I think that neoliberalism, as we know, take many forms. For instance, neoliberalism was under Thatcher, but also under Blair, you know. So you can, neoliberalism is perfectly compatible with social democratic government, you know. So I think that what we are seeing is the danger. And I think that the left, in fact, should not be obsessed with the danger of a return of fascism, because at the moment there is all the no, we need to be anti-fascist, and the problem of the fascism. And in the meantime, you know, they are not seeing what's happening from the point of view of neoliberal government, who are really re-establishing their control. For instance, I mean, to take just one case, in case of France, I'm almost convinced that Macron is going to win again in the election next year. And, you know, 2 years ago, it would seem impossible, because he was very, very low in the opinion polls. But now he's recuperating, and, you know, you see, there is a new mentality, which I think it's a mentality in which people are really, yeah, they're a bit afraid, and they see the mode of style. So I think that we need to, the left must really act in order to impede this restoration of neoliberalism. You know? So for me, that's one of the important things. But there is something which is even more important, is the fact that the central question, I think, today should be the climate emergency. You know? And this is where we need to really create a vast collective will of different form of, you know, demand, articulated around the question for, you know, a solution, a democratic solution to the climate crisis. And this is why the subtitle of my book, you know, Left Politics and the Power of Affects, is Towards a Green Democratic Revolution. Because I also see something which called my attention. They are not so many more climate deniers today, you know, because no, all those people who want the defense of, you know, the big capitalist interests, they see that they should accept that, and of course, you know, present the form of green capitalism. I think that today, in front of the climate emergency, there are two possibilities. Either, you know, is green capitalism, because in fact, no, absolutely everybody is ecological. You know, the European Union is organizing a Green Deal, and they all want to that. But of course, the question is that for people on the left, you know, people who defend, like me, a left populist strategy, a solution to this ecological crisis cannot be done without putting into question the hegemony of neoliberalism and financial capitalism. Because financial capitalism is what is not the cause of the problem, because the problem, of course, comes from, but there has been an acceleration of the climate problem with the hegemony of financial capitalism. So there's no way in which you can really solve this problem, so I don't think solve the problem, but at least fight against that if we don't have the question. So it's really a question of, about green capitalism, in which they are going to try to use that in order to give a new lease of life to capitalism, or, present a project of what I call a green democratic revolution. And I think that, for instance, this is where I see the role of artists and artistic practices very important. Well, you know that I always believe that in the struggle for hegemony, artists play an important role, because what Gramsci called the common sense, is very much framed through those practices. But I think that today it's really very important to mobilize the kind of affects which are necessary to create a collective will that is going really to want to push a real bifurcation, ecological bifurcation, that goes in the sense of a democratic one. I think that that's really very important. And I think that today, the project of radicalizing democracy, that, as you know, has been my project since we wrote Hegemony Socialist Strategy. The project of radicalizing democracy need to be reformulated in a sense, because it must include putting into question productivism and extractivism. There's, of course, the ecological question has always been, even since hegemony, we are speaking of the importance of ecological demand. When we are insisting that we need to articulate the demand of the working class with the demand of the woman, anti-racism, and ecological. And in fact, I was just, looking at my book. In all of my books, I insist on that. But I think that today things are different, because today this has become the crucial issue. So this, I think that this chain of equivalence among different struggles should be articulated around the question of green revolution. This is what I call the hegemonic principle, the way in which all the different demands, the workers, the feminists, the anti-racists, should be organized around the defense of a green democratic revolution. I think that for me, and I believe that it's possible, because in fact, all those different groups, and they are, of course, very heterogeneous. We knew that from the beginning. It's not easy to establish a chain of equivalence. But I think that in the current context, the fact that there is this danger, which, every different group is exposed to. So there should be a way, to really create a common cause about that. But for that, you need to create a form of subjectivities which are really mobilized affects in a way in which, people are really going to create, let's say, the desire for this kind of society, and I think there it's absolutely crucial that artists contribute to the creation of this new imaginary. This is what I think is in question today.
Well, I think that times are definitely difficult. Whereas the level of anxiety is high, and many people seem depressed and disengaged. But I also like to look at this moment as some transitional moment of possibilities, and to see it in that way. And especially in art, I hope that would lead to some positive, great changes. You know, like I like to even think about this moment as a sort of a Duchampian moment when we admit to blindness. We admit that not anything can be art, but that great art, potentially great art, all the time is being overlooked. So we become more aware of our own horizon, limited horizon, and maybe that way we could become more open and to understanding other positions in order to build this chain of equivalences which we're talking about.
Yeah, I agree with you. And I also feel that this is a moment of great danger, but also of great possibilities. You know,
Right.
it is a moment. The struggle is clear. It could go into a much more authoritarian type of government, but it could also open towards, you know, a real, because this green democratic revolution must be conceived is not only a question of economy, of course, it's a question of the whole way we envisage life. By the way, since we are speaking also in the context of the US, what I want to say here is that when I envisage the green democratic revolution, I mean, this is something that, for instance, is not that I oppose, for instance, that to the project of the Green New Deal of Ocasio-Cortez, you know, because I'm very inspired by this, particularly the fact that this is a project that links together, you know, well, the struggle for the climate and struggle against inequality, you know, and equality in race, feminism, and also that envisage question of, you know, how to win the adhesion of the working classes, because obviously, you know, there are a lot of people who might feel threatened by this kind of society because they say we are going to lose our job. So I think that the project of, if we are thinking of the measures that need to be implemented, I very much agree with that. What my project is something that to add a little bit to that. This green democratic, green New Deal should be, is my question, what kind of effect do we need to mobilize for people to really, you know, want this kind of program, you know? And this is why I'm saying, well, the kind of effect that can be mobilized is to make people see that through this Green New Deal, we are going really to, it's a new step, a new stage in the democratic revolution. You know, it is something which is not simply say yes of a socio-economic measure, but there is a completely new imaginary, and it's a project, it's all those struggles must be conducted under the demand for more democracy, and this is where we can, you know, link together, say, days of struggle, LGBTQ, feminist, anti-racist, all that, because we all want, you know, a society where we all, there are people, of course, who will oppose that. Obviously, there will always be an adversary. But the people who want, you know, among the chain of equivalence, there's a common desire for more democracy. So this is why that project, I say, yeah, it's a good project, but let's envisage it from the point of view of mobilizing of effects towards, you know, a new stage of the democratic revolution.
Yeah, right. And what I particularly like how you speak about it is that it should be an optimistic vision, hopeful vision, that would want people to be engaged in it.
Yeah, absolutely. People feel, they must feel empowered by that, you know, because I think that the danger with the climate emergency is to is for instance, you know, there is a current in Europe. I don't know if it's also important in the US, the collapsologist. You know, it's a catastrophic view. Catastrophe is coming. But, you know, Spinoza used to say in politics there are two main, you know, passion, fear and hope, you know. And of course, in general, is the right mobilize fear, but the left must mobilize hope, was mobilized, it can't be a defensive project. The ecological bifurcation can't be seen as defensive. It can be seen as offensive. It's moving towards a better kind of society, more equality, more. So no, I agree very much, because if not, people might just become, oh my God, skeptical or cynical and say, oh, so nothing is going to be done. We are going to our extinction. No, I think that will be, this certainly not the way in which, the left should be moving. And this is also where I was saying the danger is that this kind of hope might be mobilized by green capitalism. Because green capitalism is going to say, yeah, there is a solution. It's through, more technological investment, but that of course is not something. And some people might be interested in that. But if you want really to mobilize a collective will, it needs to be done around something that is. Yes, people must feel empowered. They are going to be the participant. It's not just something that we are, okay, no, let's do the expert. No, I think it's something in which we all need to be involved. Then that's what I understand by why I speak a green democratic revolution.
I think it's a great term. And and I can't wait to read the book. When is it coming out?
Well, I'm writing it at the moment. It should be ready by beginning of March, and it will be published in the year. So.
Yeah, I'm sure many people are waiting for it because we all need some more advice from someone like you. And I think many people and more people realize that it's so important to have a political framework to understand, to get some perspective on what's going on and to understand what's going on. The news on the media are pretty depressing, but when one has
I think that we need
vision,
something stronger. Yeah, passion. Really, we need to suscitate, desire for some change and a passion for that. So I think that our book is going to remain topical. Because what is at stake, and what I will add, what we had of course not discussed because this was a different conjuncture, is precisely this idea of a green democratic revolution, and that we need to really mobilize passion for an ecological transition, ecological bifurcation. This is, I think we should really close this exchange.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chantal. It was a pleasure talking with you and a pleasure working on this book. And I hope maybe we can make something else together in the future.
Yes. No. I really love it. I really love it. I think it's absolutely precious.